Manhood, brought to you by Jameson, natural sources since 1922, and Racetrack.
So thanks for joining us once again for another episode of Manhood. Today's topic is one that is very near and dear and very apt to what we see our fellow men engaging in these days, and it's unfortunate that this has to be a topic that's so topical,
right?
And very high up on our agenda to have that discussion. So there's no better way to get it out there and to have that discussion other than to have the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So with me to my right, always a pleasure, Joel Julian, Johanse Ayodike, and today she's not a man.
Hi guys.
Certainly not our very own Janine Edwards, radio personality. Thank you so much for sitting in today, Janine.
Sure.
Replacing, you're way better to look at than Blaze.
I'll tell him that.
We'll keep it our secret here. So Janine is joining us, of course, because of the nature of the topic that we're about to discuss, to give that opinion.
Mm-hmm.
That again, we're a few men. We're not talking to all men. We are few men talking to all men.
Right.
Or did I get that right?
No, it's perfect. A few men talking to all men.
I think we're not talking on behalf of all men.
Mm-hmm. But we are few men talking to
all men. And women, to
Mm-hmm.
everyone who would listen to these episodes, because what we want to do is we want to get resolve.
Mm-hmm.
We want change, and change in a positive light. And every topic, every episode that we have a discussion on, you would find would overlap. A lot of times the conversations overlap. So one week we might be talking about mansplaining. Another week we might be talking about double standards or domestic violence. You'd find that even though we are very specific on days like today, talking about domestic violence, there's a lot of cross-pollination.
Right.
So once again, Janine, thank you so much for being here. It's certainly not an easy topic to discuss, but we need to talk the things that need to be talked. So just really quickly, I like to open with always, giving the definition that we find for domestic violence. And in this case, domestic violence, also known as intimate partner violence, is a pattern of behavior where one person in a domestic relationship uses physical, sexual, emotional, or psychological abuse to control and manipulate their partner. This can occur between spouses or partners, as well as between family members or people who live together. Domestic violence can take many different forms, including physical abuse such as hitting, punching, or choking, sexual abuse such as forced sex or unwanted sexual contact, emotional abuse such as name-calling, put-downs, and constant criticism, and psychological abuse such as controlling behavior, isolation from friends and family, and threats of harm.
Mm-hmm.
A lot in there, and a lot of misconceptions. As to what's this. Because notice we start off by saying domestic violence, intimate partners. There's nothing about male on female, female on female, male on male,
right.
Or even the fact that it doesn't always have to be where it's intimate relations. Apparently, it can be if your brother's living with you and he's going through, you're abusing him. All that is for a form of domestic violence. And so I want to use the occasion as well. We have our other episode that comes out that we'll be seeing soon, called A Woman's Worth, and there were some really key topics that they brought up, or subject matters that they brought up that really wowed me as to how deep domestic violence goes.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we always depend on our subject matter expert here, Johanse, our behavioral consultant, to take away this one.
Firstly, I would like to simplify the definition a little bit, right? Domestic violence. So let's break down domestic. Domestic means within the home, within the house. And violence means intent to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So is the intent to hurt within the home or the house. So it could be physical, because you could intend to hurt someone physically. You could intend to hurt someone psychologically, emotionally, financially, etc. But the intent to hurt, for me, is the important part, because when speaking to someone, even the way you speak to them, you could have the intent to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I gave an example once. I think it was a couple, and the husband said something, and she picked up a piece of paper and she pelted at him. Of course, a piece of paper wouldn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But she said she imagined in her mind the piece of paper going through his head.
So the intent was there.
Yeah. Now, of course, it mightn't be classified as violence because he wasn't actually hurt. But even understanding where the seed of it comes from
Right.
is an action intent to hurt. What do you think, Joel?
Yeah, well, intimate partner violence, you know. I actually brought this book here, V.S. Naipaul, The Mystic Monsieur. Now, everybody know V.S. Naipaul, obviously, right? This is his first novel. And there's something I read in it. And it just kind of showed me, like sometimes what we kind of take for granted in Trinidad. So I just reading a little bit,
course,
and not going to be
please,
long,
yeah.
right? So the story is about a protagonist, a guy named Ganesh, right? So Ganesh now get married. He get married to a woman named Leela. So, you know, Leela continued to cry, and Ganesh loosened his leather belt and beat her. She cried out, oh God, he go kill me today, self. It was their first meeting. A formal affair done without anger on Ganesh's part or resentment on Leela's. And although it formed no part of the marriage ceremony itself, it meant much to both of them. It meant that they had grown up and become independent. Ganesh had become a man. Leela, a wife, was privileged as any other big woman. Now she too would have tears to tell of her husband's beatings. And when she went home, she would be able to look sad and sullen as every woman should. And I was reading that and I was saying,
Wow.
well, yeah,
A
so
lot
this
in
is,
there.
it,
A lot
it's,
in there.
what my takeaway from it is that unfortunately, you have situations where couples may believe that this sort of violence, a man beating his woman or vice versa, is like a rite of passage or
He became a man.
to something to cement the relationship. And the unfortunate thing is that I believe that there are lots of relationships that people have, whether it be man, woman, otherwise, where there's this level of violence that takes place. And it is happening because for yourself, you either see it when you're growing up or you believe that this is something that, you know, we have heard it before. If you don't beat me, you don't love me.
If you beat me,
That
don't
kind of
love
thing.
me.
Yeah.
And I just, like, this topic is not a topic that I believe needs to be taken lightly, because I'm hoping that even in our conversations here and trying to scratch the surface or get into the topic of domestic violence, you might help somebody realize that you could want better for yourself, kind of thing. So I say I believe that relationships is not easy, because it's easy for us as individuals when you hear somebody has been a victim of domestic violence. It's easy for us at the end of the day to say, he could have walked away, she could have walked away.
Yeah.
That easy to say.
Yeah.
But you don't know what everything is that tied into it, you know, what it means, and what it may take to get out of that relationship, you know, so.
Jeanine, what's your take on that? You don't beat me, don't love me.
Well, I don't know. I've been a female in this country right now in 2023. It's a very scary thing to be, personally. And I have had experiences with people that I love around me going through domestic violence. And what I can say is that people that find themselves, men and women that find themselves in this situation, is usually, they didn't think it would have been like that. And then what happens is the behavior, it continues. So it might start off as a cough one day and it will escalate. And over time, you wouldn't really remember how life was before that. So as some people say, it's easy to leave. It's not easy to leave.
It's not.
I've seen it firsthand, and it's not easy to leave. The research says a person would leave 7 times before they actually leave. So for the women that go through it in our society, when we point fingers and we say, you know, her eye blue, or you see the marks on her neck, or whatever the case is, everybody going through it, and people do realize, you know, it became toxic, and they do realize, oh, well, I hope it would have get better, and I hope he would have stopped treating me, so I hope she would have stopped taking advantage of me like that. And people live in hope. So it takes a while for them to realize that hope, that feeling, or that respect that you got way at the beginning, maybe in the courting stage, that hope for that behavior to come back is probably not going to return because you've allowed disrespect to come in to the relationship and to the bond. So it affects us, and I think it starts from young. As you said, if you see somebody beating your mom, if you see your dad beating on your mom, or your mom break up with her husband and she got an ex-boyfriend, and that next boyfriend is still beating on your mom. She broke up with that guy and you got an ex-boyfriend. So you've seen now 3 different men beat your mom up. You may grow up and be like, I would never hit a woman because I've seen what men did to my mom, but you may grow up to think that it is okay because I've seen so many men do this to my mom. It must be okay, and this is how you really control the other person. And I think sometimes that's it, they want control. I've heard very scary stories. I've seen girls that have been in the hospital because they nearly lost their eye and have broken arms, women that were pregnant and got beaten with their kids inside their stomach, from the father of the child. I've heard and seen some very horrific things in our country, and I'm sure throughout the world. So where does it start? Where does it end? There's a good conversation to have, but we need to watch how we raise our men,
So one of the things, as we talk, a part of manhood, Janine, and again, thank you for being here and being open. I know you as a normally very bubbly person, and clearly this topic is a heavy one, and it touches all of us. One of the things that we intend to do here is continue to have that conversation. And as I mentioned at the start, the topic in domestic violence will always factor in to some of the other topics that we discussed, for example, toxic masculinity being one of those. And the question is also perception. So in one case, someone might say, you don't beat me, you don't love me. That's an upbringing for what that woman perceives as love. So we look at in many ways how somebody is brought up, what they understand, as you just mentioned, if they see it on a continuous basis. But there's so many other areas of domestic violence that, for example, women living in fear. We hear, and these are just some of the things that I want to discuss here today. 1 in 3 women in Trinidad and Tobago go through domestic violence. However, what we also see is the male suicide rate is higher than the female rate, and a lot of that is sometimes in the cases of men in domestic in situations of domestic violence, being victims and have no recourse. And that doesn't just mean the abuse of physical abuse, but in relationships where it's because of the nature of the system, that it's taken advantage of and being accused of domestic violence. I can say, in a situation in my earlier years, of a situation of being accused of levels of domestic violence, and was taken aghast by it. Like, what are we speaking about? And then you start to realize there are levels where, to one person, it's accepted, depends on the relationship with that particular person. And in another case, when you feel a certain way, it's toxic masculinity.
Right.
And all these other things start to stem from it. And the accusation, once it's out there, is immediate. It's immediate in terms of people lose family, they lose friends, they lose, in certain cases, jobs, they might be arrested. And then you realize that, what's happening here, because there's immediately it's seen as the man is the perpetrator on an instant case. So just by the very basis of, as I said, we heard in A Woman's Worth, in a conversation they were having based on domestic violence. Initially, this term gender-based violence was seen as initially it's women being abused.
Right.
But now it's being looked at on a holistic basis of it's people being abused. And as we saw in the definition I read earlier about the various levels, physical being one of the main ones that we speak about, but there's emotional and there's all these other financial, there's all these other forms of abuse.
Let me ask both you and you answer a question. So we know that gender-based violence is not just the woman who is being abused, right? But you as a man, if you're in a relationship and your partner is physically abusing you, would you feel secure enough to go in a police station to report that?
No, you're taking that as a man.
Well, now in 2023, yes.
You will.
Maybe a few years ago, no.
Right.
right? But now, because of all the education, right? And I even had the privilege of doing some work with the TTPS, and they have a lot of workshops for policemen, policewomen, police in general. So
that's physical you're talking about. You go to police and
so
report
for physical abuse. So as a male being physically abused, yes, I would in 2023. Emotional.
Which is the bigger one for men?
To be honest, I'm not certain the law for emotional abuse, right? How the law treats with emotional abuse, and that's something we could do some research on, right? Because emotional abuse also comes into play dynamics, right? And how I grew up, like saying I grew up soft. When somebody tell me something, I may take it as emotional abuse. But if I grew up hard, whatever she's saying, it don't really matter to me. Right? So even the education part of it, that and especially like on the local station and stuff, if we could have those scenarios, like, these skits and stuff where people see, the difference. I use in local stations too, but we could have on YouTube, we could have, as many things as possible. So we could have the education part of it, because that emotional abuse part is so touchy. But if we go back with the definition I gave before, intent to hurt. So if you say something with the intent to hurt, if you do something or try to manipulate a situation with the intent to hurt, that's how you'll know. So if you're a victim, if you feel hurt, I'm not saying it automatically is abuse, but if you feel hurt, then you should start questioning, well, why the person do it? Why did he do that? Or even for yourself, do the self-introspection. And if it's consistent that I feel hurt, or the person is attempting to hurt me, or intent is to hurt me, then you could go in the realms of emotional abuse.
So if the intent isn't there, it's not violence? So for example, if for the case of you come home tight, and for whatever reason there's an altercation, and it doesn't have to be in physical blows. Sometimes, I don't know, in whatever scenario the person's hurt, be it emotionally, financially, you're going to take our money or take his money, whatever the case may be. There's no conscious intent at that particular point. If there's a pattern, it's one thing, but at that particular point, and at that stage, the person decides, I'm going to report you.
Before report, in a couple,
because we have cancel culture on all forums. It's like
right.
Immediately
a conversation should be had, right? I know, especially like if you go through family court, they'll always put you onto a mediator first, and before you reach litigation, there's mediation to really go through to realize, okay, what was this person's intent? Why this occurred? Versus just going straight to. Now, if it's physical, that's different. We have proof of that goes straight to the law. But in terms of emotional, there should be some sort of mediation to properly understand the dynamics of things before going as far as accusing somebody of abuse. Either way.
So, Janine, in a relationship, is there any scenario where you will accept any form of abuse, or that you mightn't see it as abuse at that particular point, but like, this person had a bad day, or it's a one-off, or it's a moment, and not see it as a red flag? Is there any, be it in the past, or not necessarily asking, your personal, something that's happened in perspective, but
well, yeah, I mean, things will start off, as you say. I actually have a program. We're going to do it now, Red Flags on Slam there, but things will usually start off like that, but the red flags are there. I think we just kind of put a little blindfold on and make an excuse here or there, but the signs are always there. I think we are just in love with being in love most of the time, and in love with that fantasy that maybe you're not accepting of the reality, which is that this is maybe a very dangerous situation to get yourself involved in. Yes, I've experienced some interesting relationships, and then you learn. You learn what you should and should not accept, and what is love. And I think maybe what we could teach our children in school, in primary schools and stuff, maybe what we could do, we could teach our kids to love themselves and what loving yourself means. And then that way, even if you had issues with your dad, even if you had issues with your mom and you never met your mom and you never met your dad, or they used to beat you, whatever the case is, at least you understand what to love yourself means, so that, you could love you before you love somebody else. And when you look to love somebody, then you'd know, hey, but that is respectful. that hurting me, that couldn't be love, you know? So I think we have a long way to go.
But do you think that women that you may hear in conversations are really living in constant fear? Or is it you know, at that point when these situations...
I do know women that have lived in fear. I do know women that have not gone to work, have taken many days and weeks off, and stopped living with friends and stopped living with family. I do know women that do live in the fear. I do know the financial part of stealing bank cards and jewelry and stealing stuff so you don't have your things, stealing your phone so you can't make a call. So I do, and I have seen for myself these things, and they exist, and family members know they exist. If you, that's the thing. And in our country, it's a cycle, man, because you know that that person is abusive. You know your brethren is an abusive girl. You know that you just hear it. You're just not gonna say anything. Yeah. You know it. As men, we know in our cliques who is doing what. I went to a Lime the other day and I saw a lady and she had a black eye. She has 3 kids for the guy, you know. But I saw the black eye. I've never asked. Yeah. Boy, you got a black eye. Oh, you got a black eye. Yeah, I mean,
you fall and hit yourself.
It's really hard to fall and hit yourself in your eye. It's really hard to walk into a door and hit your eye. Per se, you can hit your forehead, your cheek. But to say your eye come from a nice punch to the head, right? So, but as I said, looking at her and understanding that this is her situation, she's been there for 20-something years. She's bringing up 2 beautiful girls and a young man, and they're going to be seeing this. They're going to replicate this because they're going to think that it's normal. Because she's taking her like so normal. I know.
But what about an abusive relationship? So in terms of both parties, because I've seen it.
Both toxic relationship.
Both are physical. So he hitting lash, she pelting lash through, and sometimes she pelting harder lash or doing things worse than the man, right? Would that fall under domestic violence? And in that case, is it both parties have to report one another?
Well, I don't know about the reporting thing in Trinidad because I would have had some experience with it. It is lovely to make a report, right? It's lovely.
But what happens after?
Exactly. But to me, a female making a report, take your time, because the step is not just to make the report. The step is to leave the situation. So making a report is not going to make the situation end. You have to pick up yourself. You may have to change your address. You may have to save your money. You may have to go by a family or friend. You might have to change your job. There's so many things to me before you even make that report. That report is just to make sure anything happening, police could be on your side, but you have to get yourself out of that situation, because making the report, and as I said, most of the time you make the report, you're going to go right back to the situation.
A self-worth thing too.
Because you don't understand yet how it is to function without this treatment.
Correct.
You don't understand what it is to be treated nice. Somebody buy you a drink and you might waste that person the nicest person because you're not even accustomed to somebody being nice to you. So it takes a lot of mental strength to get out of a domestic relationship. And I think what we need more centers that assist a transitioning person, somebody that is I'm thinking about it, I want to leave, I want better for my children, but if I leave him or if I leave her, how am I going to maintain them, how am I going to feed them? I can't leave. How I go leave? I'm talking about, I don't need that. I go take the licks because I need this.
It sounds easy.
It sounds easier than
because
it is.
every time we unfortunately read these incidents in like the newspaper, the quickest thing people say is she should have left. But as Janine was saying, the easier said than done.
Yeah, that's
because
not easy all the time.
You have this partner. You're living in a house with a man. You're living in a house with a woman. You have 2 grown-ass children.
It could be your house too.
How do you leave? Like, how do you leave? How do I leave? And do I leave you can't leave by yourself. You're leaving the children.
Exactly.
And your family could also be telling you, you know what I mean, that is all part of it. You have to take that if they're coming from an old culture. Like,
you still have to go to work and he still know where you're working, she still know where you're working.
Exactly. So it becomes
what I've seen worked, and this has maybe in the last 10 10 years, right? The police unit now has the gender-based unit.
Right.
They have victim support. They have organizations like Families in Action, Rape Crisis, etc. So they actually work together because they are safe houses in Trinidad, of course, anonymous. And so going to organizations like those will give you the kind of support. So they would ask those questions, you know, well, are you working? You know, should you go back home right now? Sometimes I've seen even the same evening of the report that they actually take the woman to safe houses. So I'm not saying it's perfect, right? But at least I see now there are a lot more resources for women and not just a straight report and, you know, they go through the whole it's biopsychosocial aspect of that woman's situation. Do you have children? How many children? Sometimes they go and pick up the children immediately, depending on what it is. So there are a lot more options now. Again, it's not perfect.
But at what stage, though? At what stage is it considered domestic violence for either party, for the male or the female if it's female and female, male and male? Right.
So you remember I asked you all a question earlier, if you would report it. I was in a situation where I was in a relationship with a beautiful young lady. This year, so obviously he's not my current partner. Right?
Yeah.
And she's smaller than me, but she grew up in a situation where she saw domestic abuse being the order of the day now. Like, you know, both parties fighting. Like, that's what she knew. You know, you grew up in a situation of no calm, no ease. And she pelting thing behind me, pelting lash, doing all kind of different things. But I never saw myself or believed I was a victim. I still don't believe I'm a victim, you know. And so I felt I would have been a victim if I were to go to a police station and say, well, boy, this woman tripping off, you know, because the moment I raise my hand to lash, the moment I raise my hand, I become, because as I say, I am bigger than the person, smally and stuff like that. And that situation, that relationship was for a while. And as Janine was saying, sometimes your partners know. I remember we were in a house party, and something had play off in the house party, and she pelting lash upstairs, and my partner's hearing the commotion, so they obviously know what is going on, and they probably in their mind saying, whatever, but
that is okay.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, honestly, it happened. As I never felt as a victim. I still don't believe I'm a victim, you know, but I felt I had to come to the realization at the moment where I say, well, we could cuss, but F it now. Like, at this point in time, you take what you need to take or whatever you need to do what you have to do, but that's the end of the rope, for me now. That's the end of the rope. And it took a while. I ain't lying to tell you, it took a while because obviously if you're if you're together with somebody, I believe you wouldn't be with somebody if you don't love them or care for them.
Well, Joel.
Yeah.
Not to start a therapy session, right?
Yeah.
But you're going to anyway.
No, I'm taking it.
Is why you stayed. After she pelted the first few things, after she pelted the first few last, why you stayed?
Because Janine was saying earlier, that level of hope. You hope that this is just a one-off thing. You hope that this person, like, this is not what they know. So I'm not the biggest person, right? So when I growing up in school and stuff like that, I know to talk. So I know words to make, so with intent to hurt. So I would say something to hurt, right? So I'm not a physical person. So I started wondering did I say something?
Triggers.
Was I the one that like, was it my fault? Are you always looking at if you are the reason why this thing happened, kind of thing?
So that goes with Janine's point before.
These are busting.
I'll stay like 5 minutes again.
Janine you're saying that we need to teach children in primary school self-love. And if we, again, it can't be perfect. I don't know no perfect self-love program.
Right.
But teaching, giving them more awareness of self-love, so when they reach that stage, the red flags would be immediate.
Yeah.
Immediate. So if one lash, now you could rationalize it and say maybe the person grew up in a certain way, but that doesn't mean you accept it.
Right.
And self-love, I could, even for myself, I really learned self-love maybe about 7-8 years ago, really what that is, you know. So, and I've seen people accept things. I have accepted things that I realized I don't love myself. And it's only after, sometimes even hearing other people's story, I realized, wait now, I was taken that. You know, and where it is physical, emotional, etc., etc. But and even sometimes, well, I dodged the thing she felt, I dodged it. So it's not violence, but that's still not acceptable.
Yeah. So I realized that, you know, Jeannie, I know you have to run in a bit. This is a conversation that is not a one-stop shop. Not a one-size-fits-all. This is something that we'll certainly be speaking about on several different bases. Because as I mentioned to you, Joel, I would say it. There was a point that I was accused of it,
Right.
you know, and, you know, in retrospect and looking back at it, you kind of ask yourself, what did I do? Like, you know, in terms of, because it wasn't but the point I'm trying to make is, even though you can look and you can say, okay, all the physical things that you talk about wasn't there. The fact is, as a result, the immediacy of losing people that you love, no one asked the question, hey, was this person in a state of is there other reasons why I lived with these people? Did I see any signs? You know, was there anything at all? But the moment it is said, accusation, and everyone at that point sort of locks you off, and you become, like I said, you know, painted as an abuser, and these things, and I can tell you, it's a very, very, very painful place to be, especially when you know that's not you, and especially when, and in the cases, do you now open up and sort of expose the truth, or do you just, you know, move on and learn from it and do things like we're doing now and having conversations and reaching out to other people who may be going through certain things? But again, as I said, there's so many things that we want to speak about with regards to the topic. But while we have Janine here for just a bit, I just wanted to bring up, in A Woman's Worth, one of the things that was brought up with regards to domestic violence, we talk about triggers. And a woman dresses a certain way, and you know that's always a topic. You know, they go out on a date, they go home, they consent, the act takes place. While the act is taking place with two consenting adults, the woman says, stop. The fella continues.
Oh, why didn't he stop?
This is what we're here to discuss. You're in the heat of the moment, at the start
Well,
of it.
if she says stop, something must be
What is the difference
something
between
is
a
wrong.
minute and continuing on in the height of the moment? And the fella is then charged with either abuse or now rape.
But boo-boo, he was told to stop. Something could have be hurting, something could have be pulling. She could have catch cramp. But she asked, you understand, the girl just said, stop, ease him up for 2 minutes. And if you couldn't hear that, I don't know. I mean, English real easy to communicate. Stop. I think stop. Everybody understands stop is stop, right?
I think for the most part.
When you say no is no, but I'm talking about those scenarios where the fella is now charged.
Well, I know.
As you could go and report a situation
right now where friends lyman. Next morning, friend rape friend.
Right.
What? Crazy, right? Anyway, that's the situation now. But in our country,
wait, they changed their mind in terms of, or they just, or a rape actually took place? Because there's a difference.
Well,
women now.
No, we don't know. This is where I'm getting to. So when we go when police get involved, police in our country are like, well, rape is the hardest thing to prove in our country because it's between, as you said, two adults. One person could easily say, but she wanted it, and the other person could say, but I never. Everybody has something to say, so how do you prove this? Even fluids, even going to get a test done or whatever, just proves that it happened. It doesn't prove that her story or his story is true. But in your situation, when somebody does speak out and say, hey, stop, whether they change their mind last minute, they had a bad flashback, they had an experience, they were in pain, they catch a cramp, if they said to stop, I believe the right thing to do would be to stop, at least to figure out what's going on. Because, yes, anything other than that, yes, you have given consent to boogie-woogie and have a dance, but if I tell him my heel looking like it's going on break, I need to stop dance right now, and you continue dancing with me on the dance floor, my heel break, you'll be hurting me on the dance floor. I might still be able to dance with you, my foot, mash up my foot. So stop means stop, no means no. in our country, I do appreciate that the TTPS and the whole body, they have tweaked it a little bit. So we do have a sex offenders list in Trinidad and Tobago. I believe we have 16 or 17 people listed on the sex offenders list. I had an interview on Slam to find out more about it, right? So in our country, for you to be on the list, you have to be arrested, be convicted, serve the time, and then when you are now released back into society, that's when you're included on the said list.
Okay. So not just a charge, not just
not a charge. No, you actually have to serve the time.
Process,
you have to serve the time, and now when you're back out and released into society, now you are a part of this list.
Right.
Yeah, because I thought, well, we have offenders. What if you're living down the road?
Yeah.
No, you have to serve the time and go through the whole thing. So I do commend CTPS, and you mentioned something earlier that ringed on my mind. Family Planning Association of Trinidad, they offer free counseling. Yay! They offer free counseling to anybody that might be going through something. It doesn't matter. And if you feel like, well, it's Trinidad, I don't trust them. Honey, I'm part of FPA, and I've been part of FPA for a very long time. And my counselor not even from here, right? So the counselors are not, most of the time, they're not even from Trinidad and Tobago.
Right.
You know, my counselor's from Jamaica. So I think give it a try, give it a shot, and have the conversations.
So Janine, this is a shorter one than normal, but a very we appreciate you taking the time and not just taking the time, but to sit down on the table, you know, on a predominantly male talk show where it's sort of geared to talk to our males and invoke other thoughts and opinions,
Right.
and you know, presence yourself and talk about it. You know, I commend you, hats off, and to give your opinion, of course, is well taken. So what I would ask is, just in our close, as we speak, you know, we're going to continue talking about this topic. Blaze is going to join us once again. We have, you know, Niall and Ken Simmons as well, and a couple other people, you know, that would continue to join in these conversations as we hope to reach men and to just, you know, regardless of what the excuses, backgrounds, etc. are, we all agree we want it to stop.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line. It must stop.
Right.
Whether we could say they're triggers, whose fault it is, it needs to stop.
Correct.
That's what we can agree on. What's your takeaway from today?
I think, aside from it needing to stop, we need to show our children a better example. If we want to have a better future, we need to don't think it's okay. Don't think that they don't know. Don't think that they're not old enough to observe. They are listening. They are aware. I think if it is you just had a child and you're in a bad relationship and you're seeing again toxic, don't stay for the child. Don't do yourself that. Don't do the child that. You know. I am a victim. I am someone. Yeah, my parents, they stay together because of me. You know, I appreciate it. I do. But look at that split up and was no worries because they weren't the happiest. So don't sacrifice your happiness and your joy for the child. Try and find the joy in yourself so you could give your child that joy and that love. And parents are really and fathers. Oh, fathers, we need you so much, you know. I know, and ladies, ease up on the child. Father, he might have an ex-woman, a small thing, what you go do at this point. But your child needs a father. And do not be selfish and do not keep your children from their fathers. It is very important, especially the little girls. You might think it's just the boys need their dads alone, but little girls need their fathers just as important. And fathers, treat your children right. Men out there, carry your daughters out. Show your daughters how you want a man to treat her. Same thing, fellas. Teach the fellas how to be men and how to care for a woman, how to care for, you know, monthlies come. That's how we just do it. As a man, that's how we just operate when the monthlies here. Because these are things we're going to have to function with from now till, you know, the end of time. So I'm always hopeful. Always, it's not like this might be a toxic relationship with Trinidad and Tobago and me, but I'm always hopeful. I'm always hopeful that we are going to get there one day. You know, there are young people and young women and young men listening, and hopefully it falls in somebody's garden and they get up and they act. Hopefully this is the 7th time that he or she leaves, and this would be the last time that they have to go through that. Family members that are going through the situation where he has left or she has left 4 times already, it's okay because the journey now starts. You know what I mean? After they've left, you have a lot of healing to do. So be there for somebody. You don't know what people are going through. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, when we had our first conversation about the Manhood podcast, the conversation was, I believe that every conversation, if you can at least touch one person and help them be able to navigate through this world. So I'm hoping in this episode, because I believe this topic is a serious topic.
Yeah.
One that we have to...
We only scratch the surface.
we only
scratch the surface. But my hope is that somebody who is possibly in a relationship that may not be the best relationship for them will take this opportunity to look at the relationship and make a decision that will benefit them in the future. Whether it be a man, a woman, if you are the person who is the aggressor or the person who is making the relationship toxic, look within yourself too now. Because as both Janine and Yoansi would have said, that's self-love. Looking at yourself and deciding you want better for yourself, for the future. And that the good thing about my situation that I would have spoken about is that we never had a tie. As in, there was nothing holding us together, so I didn't have to, when I was able to walk away from that relationship, I was able to close the door and that was that. There are people who may be in relationships that may not have such a clean cut. My advice is to seek advice.
Bottom line.
Yoansi would have, and Janine would have both mentioned there are avenues for persons to be able to get out of toxic or relationships that are violent. Seek the best option, reach out to persons who can help, and that is my hope. My hope is that anyone that is in a situation that they may not be the right place for them, find the best way out.
Don't wait for number 7.
As Janine said, we live in hope. I am a man, believe in hope, which is probably what would have kept me there longer than I needed to be, because I believe in second chances, and that sometimes we even need to give ourselves a second chance now.
Yeah.
My wife always says it that, there are no bad people, but sometimes good people do bad things, right? I honestly don't believe there are bad people in this world. I believe that sometimes you do shitty things, and you always, once there's life, once you see a new day, there's opportunity for you to be better.
Right. My takeaway is, one, I am grateful for even this.
Yeah.
Right? First, manhood, because it's a place for mature men having mature conversations. We're not fighting, we're not backing out, we're not cursing anything. And then to have the balance today with Janine in terms of hearing the female's perspective, and it's not the battle of the sexes, it is the collaboration, the mature conversations between. And I think this is a real hopeful thing that should continue, and we shouldn't hope it continue. We should make efforts. And Robert, I'm glad that you made the initiative also to make something like this happen. And Jean, I know your time is limited, but thank you for coming. And for anyone watching, seek any help. We mentioned family planning, families in action, gender-based unit in the police, victim support, rape crisis. Actually, just call somebody, right? Call some organization, and even if they may not be the people to handle it, they could put you onto it. And thank you, everyone, for the opportunity for us all being here.
And one of the things I wanted to touch on, just in closing, is the fact that historically, people would say you go to a police station, you go to different areas and you can't report it. Or in certain cases, the officers at that point, they take a stance and you're dismissed, right? Speaking to Superintendent Allen, and again, listening to this show, A Woman's Worth, they now have an online process.
Okay.
So you
Okay,
no
that's cool.
longer need to go to a police station.
Okay.
You can
That's
actually
cool.
go online
That's good.
and put that case there, so you don't have to reach number 7. You can start the process. So there is awareness, there is that guidance.
Yeah.
So you're not waiting to say, okay, well, I made the report, so I'm there. That should something worse happen, because you can have a double homicide or a suicide. The person then killing themselves afterwards, and you're still a victim to that. So you might get the police might get a chance to intervene. So what they do is, in that report, the report is then made, but then you have the advice all along to say, hey, look for these signs, look for these red flags. But so one of my takeaways is that excerpt that you read from the book, simply to say, doing that is not being a man. We're here to say that. That's not what a man is. That might be what you've learned by upbringing. That might be what your peers have taught you. That might be what movies have taught you, or triggers. We blame triggers. We blame a lot of things, and it's just that. It's a blame. It's just not right. It just needs to be stopped. For males, for females, as I read from the start, domestic violence is, as you put it, domestic abuse or violence in a home or violence in a dwelling. It's just wrong. There's no excuse around it.
Whatever level it is.
There may
should be a peace.
There may be instances, as you said, where good men or good women act out, but the fact is the underlying reason needs to be addressed. And it's not a case of it happened and it's a one-stop shop and it can't be reversed, because there are situations. Something happens and you go for counseling, you have a conversation, you realize, this is leading me to do this, and it stops. I don't think it's a case where, the first time something happens, that's it, and it's a red flag, as some people, may use the term. But with all that being said, it's a conversation. We've just scratched the surface, as Joel mentioned. It's something that we'll be talking about over and over and over. But the message to leave you with today is, male or female, it needs to stop.
Yes.
See you next time.
Manhood, brought to you by Jameson, natural sources since 1922, and Racetrack.